Welcome students. In this lecture, we discuss on conservation of biodiversity. Biodiversity is affected or given impact by a different man-made as well as also the natural hazards. So, the conservation or the protection is necessary to to save our life or the environment. Now, what is conservation of biodiversity? The conservation of biodiversity is protection, upliftment, and scientific management of biodiversity so as to maintain it at its threshold level and derive sustainable benefits for the present and future generation. Conservation of biodiversity means protection and preservation of flora and fauna on the earth one, and it gives a sustainable development or helpful to the all mankinds they are present on the earth one. Conservation of biodiversity is essential for the survival of all the species in a biodiversity one. Optimum conservation of biodiversity means richness of ecosystem and improved quality of life. What is biodiversity conservation and why the conservation is important for us? Simply, biodiversity conservation, it is the practice of protecting and preserving the wealth and variety of species, habitats, ecosystems and genetic diversity on the planet one. It is important for our health, wealth, food, fuel and services we depends on it, and it plays an integral role in supporting many sectors of development. What is the main aim of conservation to a biodiversity? The main aim of conservation is to save species and plants from extinction and their habitats from a destruction one. Because due to man-made and the natural hazards one, the some species they are extinct and given to impact on their natural habitat, so they leads to a destruction one. So that's why the developed countries are looking for a sustainable supply of a biological resources from the developing countries and easy access to them as well as. Then which one are the different types of a conservation of a biodiversity? Simply we says the conservation is nothing but protection, preservation, management, restoration of wildlife and natural resources such as forest and water. Through the conservation of biodiversity and the survival of many species and habitats which are threatened due to human activities can be ensured. One. There is a some urgent need not only to manage and conserve the biotic wealth but also restore the degraded ecosystem. So there are a different conservation given to the biodiversity in which mainly the in situ conservation and second one ex situ conservation of biodiversity. What is in situ conservation? The in situ conservation is on site of conservation or the conservation of genetic resources in a natural populations of a plant or animal species such as forest genetic resources in a natural population of tree species one. That means into their natural habitat given to a conservation, it's called as in situ conservation. It is the process of protecting an endangered plant or animal species in its natural habitat either by protecting or cleaning up the habitat itself or by defending the species from predators. In India, the different number of natural habitats are maintained by some government or the NGOs one. Those are national park, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves one. India has over 600 protected areas which includes over 90 national parks, over 500 animal sanctuaries, and 15 biosphere reserves. They are protected by government, and in this particular national park, wildlife sanctuaries and the biosphere reserves one, they are given to conservation and the protection of the all types of the biotic factors they are present in an environment one. Now, what is national park? A national park is an area which is strictly reserved for the betterment of the wildlife and where activities like forestry, grazing on cultivation are not permitted one. That means totally ban given to such activities in a national park one. In this park, even private ownership rights are not allowed. That is, it is protected and protection is given by the government one. There are 104 national parks present in India. The biggest national parks are the Hemis National Park, Desert National Park, Gangotri National Park, Namatpa National Park, Kangaroo National Park, Guru Gasidas National Park, that is a Sanjay National Park one, Gir Forest National Park, Sundarbans National Park. These are the some national parks that are present in India. Then the second one, wildlife sanctuaries. A sanctuary is a protected area which is reserved for conservation of only animal and human activities like harvesting of a timber, collecting minor forest product, and private ownership rights are allowed as long as they do not interfere with well-being of animals. The boundaries of sanctuaries are not well defined and controlled biotic interference is permitted, that is, the tourist activity is allowed in a wildlife sanctuaries one. Indian top wildlife sanctuaries are the Corbett National Park, they are located in Uttarakhand, Periyar Wildlife Sanctuary, they are located in Kerala, Sundarban National Park in West Bengal, Kaziranga National Park in Assam, Ratnambore National Park in Rajasthan, Kanha National Park in Madhya Pradesh, Bandipur National Park in Karnataka, and Bandhwarg National Park in Madhya Pradesh. These are the some wildlife sanctuaries. They are located in India in a different regions. Then third one, biosphere reserve. It is also given the conservation in its natural environment, the particular animals or the biodiversity one. It is a special category of protected area where human population also forms a part of the system one, because there are human interaction and the population they are reserved the biospheres one. They are a large protected area of usually more than 5,000 square kilometer one. A biosphere reserve has three parts, though there will be a core, buffer and transition zones. So which one are the three zones? The first core zone is the inner zone. This is undisturbed and legally protected area. Buffer zone lies between the core and the transition zone. Some research and educational activities are permitted in the buffer zones of biosphere reserves one. Then about the transition zone, it is the outermost part of a biosphere reserve. Here, cropping, forestry, recreation, fishery, and other activities they are permitted. That means the human interaction is allowed in a biosphere reserves. The some part, that is a transition zone, as well as also the some buffer zone of a biosphere reserve one. Then which one are the advantages of in situ conservation? The first one, the flora and fauna live in a natural habitats without human interference. That means the flora and fauna are maintained. The life cycle of the organisms and their evolution progresses in a natural way without disturbances given by a human being or the other individuals. In situ conservation provides the required green cover and its associated benefits to our environment. Then the next one advantage, it is less expensive and easy to manage. Then the interests of the indigenous peoples are also protected in situ conservation. So this is the last one advantage given by in situ conservation. Then second one type of a conservation are nothing but ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation is the preservation of components biological diversity outside their natural habitats. That means natural habitat not given to the conservation but outside to the animal and the plants, those will be a conserve are nothing but a ex situ conservation. This involves conservation of genetic resources as well as wild and cultivated or the species and draws on the diverse body of techniques and the facilities one. Such strategies include establishment of botanical gardens, zoos, conservation strands, and gene, pollen, seedlings, tissue culture, and also the DNA bank one. Here we just see about the seed bank, gene bank, botanical gardens, etc. etc. So, what is seed gene bank? These are a cold storage where the seeds are kept under controlled temperature and humidity for storage, and this is easiest way to store the germplasm of a plant at low temperature. The seeds preserved under controlled conditions remain viable for a long duration of a time. That means from outside to the natural environment given to a preservation and the controlling of the particular plant or the fauna one. Okay, then flora one. Then about the gene bank, the genetic variability is also preserved by a gene bank under normal growing conditions. Those will be protected by human being. These are cold storage where the germ plasm are kept under control temperature and humidity for storage. This is an important way to preserving the genetic resources. Then next one, the cryopreservation, also same one, the technology they given to the preservation very low temperature, that is at about 196 degrees centigrade in a liquid nitrogen one, given to us conservation or the preservation of a such a species one for a research purpose. This technique or this ex situ conservation they should be applied. Then tissue culture bank, cryopreservation of a disease free meristem is a very helpful, and such a meristem they are useful for to culturing the particular tissue, and with the totipotency conditions the entire individual they are form or they propagate them. So the long-term culture of excised root and the shoot are maintained in a tissue culture bank one. The next one, ex situ conservation are nothing but a botanical garden. A botanical garden is a place where a flower, fruit, and the vegetables are grown, and those they are protected and maintained by a human beings one. The botanical gardens provide beauty and calm environment. Most of them have started keeping exotic plant for educational and the research purpose in a botanical gardens. The next one are nothing but the animal translocation. Release of animal in a new locality which come from anywhere else one. So are nothing but animal translocation. So simply the ex situ conservation is given. Then the zoological gardens. In the zoos, wild animals are maintained, and captivity and the conservation of wild animals, that is those will be a rare endangered species, they are protected and maintained in the zoological gardens. The oldest zoo they given the existence today, but also they are protected the some animals in zoological gardens. In India, there will be a first zoo comes at 18th century one, and there will be a given nowadays one the large number of species such as about 3000 species of vertebrates they are maintained in the zoos or the zoological gardens one. There are some advantages with the ex-situ preservation or the conservation one. So the ex-situ conservation, it gives usefulness for declining population of a species one, that is helpful to population of a species they are maintained in a ex-situ conservation. The endangered animal on the verge of extinction are also successfully breeded in ex-situ preservation or the conservation one. Threatened species and the breeded in captivity and then release in their natural habitat is also implied by the ex-situ conservation. Ex-situ centers offer the possibilities of observing wild animal, which is otherwise not possible the other conditions or the preservations one. It is extremely useful for conducting research and scientific work on to the different species one. So this is all about the biodiversity conservation is given by in situ conservation, that is in natural habitat, and ex situ conservation out of the natural environment given to maintaining preservation and also improves their number by a different way. In this entire topic, we just see about the national park conservation, in situ conservation, ex situ conservation, what is botanical garden, seed bank, seed gene bank, etc. etc. Then the different questions on this particular topic for given a definition or the explain conservation of biodiversity, explain in situ conservation, explain ex situ conservation, same as to ask for short notes conservation of biodiversity, then in situ conservation and its advantages, ex situ conservation and its advantages. Then next one question, national park and sanctuaries, they are asked for a short notes one. Then the multiple choice question. First one question, conservation of dot dot means protection and preservation of the flora and fauna on the earth. The options are ecosystem, biodiversity and the earth one. The answer is biodiversity. That is, conservation of biodiversity means protection and preservation of the flora and fauna on the earth. Then the second question, a dot dot garden is a place where flowers, fruits and vegetables are grown. Options are botanical, zoological, national. The answer is a botanical garden. That is, a botanical garden is a place where a flower, fruits and vegetables are grown. Then the last MCQs, dot dot conservation is preservation of components of biological diversity outside their natural habitats. Outside, that means the out of the natural habitats one. Options are in situ, second ex situ, and both A and B, that is the in situ and ex situ. The answer is ex situ conservation. That is, ex situ conservation is the preservation of components of biological diversity outside their natural habitat. I think all of you well known about what is conservation or conservation of biodiversity and which one are the different parameters are used for conservation of a different resources that are found in a biodiversity, in which we just see about ex situ conservation and in situ conservation as well as their advantages given in